Christine, let's talk first of all about the powerhouse that was Caroline, your daughter, because she was an incredible presence, actually, wasn't she?
She was. Everybody said that. And even at home, if she'd come home for the weekend, your life was turned upside down. You were laughing. You were, always having to do something. She wasn't one that really just sat there, or, there was always. And her friends have told me since, if she walked in the room, whether it be a club or one of their homes, that was it. You'd laugh, or they'd be up to something.
Something was going to happen.
Something was going to happen.
Yeah. Some people in life are like that. They enter a room and make things happen.
Yeah.
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 And she was a twin. And so her twin sister, Jodie, it must be especially tough for her, all this.
I think, yeah. And, that's something I don't even know how bad it is for Jo. And but she has her family. She's got 3 little girls, and it's also hard for them because Carrie was so close to them. They used to call her Auntie Safe because she was the one that used to say, Jo, don't let them do this, don't let them do that. But they'd always go to her, and so the whole family really, it's hit them hard.
Twins, but very, very different as personalities.
Oh, totally different.
Tell me a bit more about what they were like.
Just one example was like when they were at school, Jo would do everything that was sporty, outward, walking, running, everything. They did the Duke of Edinburgh, and Jo did it for a few years. Carrie went to one session, that was enough. Yeah. She was, so different. She was into her, music and everything else.
So that performance gene was very much apparent from the start.
Yeah. They used to. They went to a lovely little village school, and the headmaster would let them put on assemblies.
Was this? Did this surprise you, or is it all in the family?
No, it surprised me because my oldest 2, are really quite quiet. Especially my oldest daughter. She's very quiet. So this was, I think 2 of them, they gave each other strength. Yeah. And Jo would always go along with whatever Carrie wanted to do. So she'd always join her in doing it.
So it wasn't a surprise to you or the rest of the family when Caroline went to stage school when she was quite young?
She did. She went at 16. Yeah, she did. That was all she wanted to do. Jo went off to uni to study broadcasting, but Carrie didn't. She just wanted to train at dance school. Yeah, singing, acting.
And did you have any concerns about that as a future career for her?
No, not at the time. I thought it was lovely, and I think you learn that, especially because I'd had 2 children, then I had the twins, that let them do what they want to do in life. If you can afford it and if you can back them, let them do it. So they both, chose their paths, and that's it. And she, she was happy and she did well.
Yeah. And were you at any time aware that even then perhaps her mental health was not the greatest?
Yes, yeah, I must say that. Even as a little girl, she'd have really big highs, and then she'd be so down or cry, and you didn't know why. And then when she was at dance school, she did have a really bad time. Then she got over it, and it used to come mostly with breakups, and I think also she had really bad PMT.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. It was something that people would say, "Oh, that's silly," it was nothing to go over. But she really did suffer with that.
Yeah, at its worst, that can have the most ungodly impact on how a woman feels.
Yeah, and and you'd know because something small would really trigger something in her, and then a few days later it'd be all right. She'd go, "Oh, all right now."
Yeah.
And then she'd be back to her old self again.
But rejection from other people, and everyone goes through breakups, but that was something that was always a really tough thing for her to cope with.
Very much so, yeah.
What did she say to you about it?
She wouldn't say a lot, really. She'd just go into herself, and you'd just worry about her because maybe she wouldn't answer the phone. So I'd go around there, which was quite difficult because I was in Norfolk. But it didn't take long to drive to her and just make sure she was all right. By the time I got there, she said, "Mum, what are you doing?" You know. And Joe was there all the time. Joe lived quite near her, so she'd talk to her every day. And then she'd, get over it, and she'd make a joke about it. But it was that, I think it was, she'd put all her trust in someone. If she really liked someone, that was it. And then if you're let down, she took it so hard.
She did so well, though, and her success in show business was, stratospheric. I mean, she was a name that every person of a young age would know, because she was on television with Ollie Murs, the X Factor show, and then she did Love Island, of course. She was really properly out there. As her mum, was that something you were really, frankly, worried about, because you knew that the real Caroline was a rather different person to the one that we all saw on the screen?
At times, most of the time, it was lovely, because I knew she was doing something she loved, and but just at times, and I could see, she was on television once doing an interview, and I could just see she wasn't right. You knew how she answered questions, how she was, that she wasn't right, and that's when you got worried. But there was no way she would, do anything else. I couldn't see her doing anything else.
No, so the career path to which she was totally suited ultimately was unsuitable for her, wasn't it, really?
Yeah, and I think that's the same for a lot of people in that business. And they say it's acceptable, and they say, "Oh, talk about it, it's acceptable," but it isn't.
What do you mean? What isn't acceptable?
If the having sort of depression at times, and that it's picked on as something else, and especially being a girl or being a woman, I think of, I don't know, I can name names, but I don't like to today, but the other girl or women that used to talk to her and said, "Look, Carrie, it's going to be like that, but you have to just go with it."
You mean the double standard, the fact that women have to be better people than some men who are in the same world?
They're so much easier to pick on, and they don't realise what hurts. I remember once in one outfit, there was Caroline Flack pregnant. Would they say that about a man, or say how he looked, or what his hair was like, or, and those things, although silly, and to me, I think, well, don't worry about it. But she would worry about it, and I think lots of the girls would worry about it.
Were you aware that she was perhaps paying too much attention to social media and what people, some very vindictive things that
she'd
people
be on
were
her
saying?
phone all the time, especially after the court case. It was, you couldn't stop her looking at it. She looked at it the whole time, and there were some really nasty things, and in the papers, and people believe what they don't. And there's no way to go against it. There's no way to come out. I really wish that I could have had the sort of bravery to come out then and do what I'm doing now. But I couldn't. But now I think, well, there's nothing to lose. I've lost the most important thing in my life. So it can't hurt me now. But at the time, and she was saying, "Oh, Mum, don't say anything. It's all going to be all right, But it wasn't.
Some of the relationships she had were incredibly public, and she was at one point, I think relatively briefly, going out with Prince Harry, and in his memoir Spare he has talked about that, and actually he's apologised for the fuss that he caused your family just by that relationship with Caroline. But you must have been concerned at that point that this was just getting a little bit out of control and just too high profile.
Yeah, but again, it was more of a friendship, and I knew about it. He visited my other daughter. He was a nice lad, and it didn't go any further because of that. It wasn't, they knew that it was never anything was going to happen. But he's a nice, and he kept in touch with her, and she kept in touch with him. And she knew that, he absolutely loved Meghan, or loves, and so I don't think that was a bad thing. I would never say that was a bad thing in her life.
No, well, that's good to know. And have you read the book?
I haven't. I've read some of what he's written about her, because it's there.
Well,
but I haven't
he's
read
very
the whole
positive
book
about her.
And and she was about him, and I can't say anything different to that.
Christine, we are going to talk now about what happened to Caroline, and she was involved in, well, you can tell us in your own words what happened. She was going out with a man called Lewis Burton, and they'd been on a night out, and...
They hadn't been out together,
Right.
they'd been out separately, and they met back at Carrie's house. He used to stay at Carrie's house. And he fell asleep. He was very drunk. Carrie was drunk. And his phone went off, and it was a text from a woman. And she went to wake him up because she got her phone in one hand, his in another. Went to wake him up, and he got up and hit his head. This is what she told me anyway. And an argument got out of hand, and he phoned the police. And what she'd done, she'd cut her wrist very badly down to the muscle.
Was that something she'd done before?
No.
So she was in great distress?
Yeah, because she knew if he phoned the police, that was it. And I don't think he realised what her life was like with press and everything else, the media. And I think she was begging him not, and he did. Anyway, that's what happened. He phoned the police, and on the way, then he started seeing that Carrie was really so hurt. He told the police, and they phoned an ambulance, and the ambulance came to the flat.
And that incident completely changed her professional life. Well, in fact, she didn't have a professional life
Nothing after that. No, nothing.
How quickly did everything just fall apart?
Days. Just days. She was, everything was cancelled. Even before she went to the first hearing, everything was cancelled.
Now, the Crown Prosecution Service, we now know, had advised that Caroline receive a caution.
Yes.
What did Caroline think about that? Was that something she could have dealt with?
Oh, yeah, because when the police arrived at her house, it's been reported there was a bloodbath. That was all Carrie's blood.
Because she'd cut herself?
And because she'd cut herself. That was never reported that it was Carrie's. A picture was taken of it by her boyfriend, and he sent it to another girl who sent it to the press.
Right. And
that, I think that was the last straw. When she found that out, that was the last straw. She couldn't believe anyone could do that to her. And the police then, they had to take her to hospital, but instead of letting her go home and her going back the next day, they took her then straight and put her in a cell for nearly 24 hours. And her twin sister waited outside the police station. They wouldn't let her in to see her for 8 hours.
What did you know about this at the time?
They phoned me straight away. Jodie phoned me, and she said, "It's all right, Mum, I'm here." And she was the first one to say, "Look, they're just cautioning her, so don't worry," because I would have gone straight there. As it was, I went in the morning because this was all overnight. But by the time I started to go, Joe said, "Oh, they've changed their mind." A policeman came out and said, "Oh, no, they've changed their mind. There's a policeman in there," well, it turned out to be a policewoman, who said she'd let someone go before and didn't want that to happen again. I've since found out it was the very, very first time this policewoman had ever challenged a CPS decision. And I've only found that out in the last few weeks.
Right. I do have a statement from the Metropolitan Police, which I just think I should read at this point. Our thoughts and sympathies remain with Caroline Flack's family for their loss, and we are sorry for the impact this has had on them. When a person is arrested, they can be held in custody for a period of up to 24 hours to allow officers time to gather evidence and investigate the alleged offence. The person is allowed legal representation, and an appropriate adult is provided if necessary. A review by the Independent Office of Police Conduct did not identify any misconduct in relation to the handling of Caroline Flack's arrest. However, it concluded that one officer involved in the investigation should get reflective practice. And our reflective practice is jargon, I assume, for training.
The thing is, they say in there, they've even said it in there that's wrong, that it was evidence. They collected no evidence. They didn't go back, as it was an evidential-led case, they didn't go back to the flat and get any evidence. Nothing. And the person that persisted in her being prosecuted, asked someone else to look at the body cam, asked someone else to read the notes. She'd done nothing. And why they can't tell me much was because no statements were taken from Caroline or Lewis, and nothing was written down by the police people. The one policeman that went to the house and then went back has now left the force, and he's refused to give a statement.
So the police apology, as far as you're concerned, is worth...
It's nothing, because they didn't. They looked into it themselves, and I've got the letter with me. It says there was nothing wrong. That's why I went to the IOPC. All they could investigate was the police's investigation, and they found that it was lacking. So that statement is not correct. It was found lacking in many parts. Even the coroner said Caroline had been treated differently, and the matrix used to go back to the CPS was incorrect.
We know now, because this is 2019, we should say, we
Yes.
know now rather more about the Metropolitan Police than we did back then, and we know a lot more about how they treat women.
Mm-hmm.
I know this is a very different case to some of the awful incidents and crime, murders and rapes that we've talked about involving police officers. But do you think this is another example of the Metropolitan Police not treating a woman properly or fairly?
Oh, totally wrong. My partner is ex-Met for many years, and the whole time he's saying that they can't do that. They can't do that. Even the duty sergeant could have said to her, "Go home." They have 14 days to charge her. And again, in the IOPC report, it says it looks like the police detective that was on wanted to wrap it up. So they kept her.
Yeah, I mean, it's not for me to make the Met's case, except I suppose I'm honour bound to point out that the Met have got to take domestic abuse seriously. We all believe that. And maybe they felt that they had to take this case happened to involve an alleged female.
Yeah, but she wasn't charged with domestic abuse. She was charged with common assault.
Right.
Which is the same as having a fight in the street or a pub. It wasn't domestic abuse. And that's one of the things that she was labelled a domestic abuser. She was 5'0" and he was 6'5". That doesn't mean anything. If she had a gun, she could have shot him. But he only had to put his hand out, and she couldn't do anything.
And what about the way she was treated by the people she was working for at the time? I mean, it seems as though their lack of interest in her, all of a sudden, was exactly that. It was
She
overnight.
just lost her job. That's it. It'd gone. Love Island was gone. She'd got another show series that she'd already taped that was ready to come out in a few months. That was cancelled. The people she worked with were amazing, and a lot of them are the people that put on Flack stock that we had last year and we're doing again this year. The producers and all the crew were amazing, and they still are, and they are to me as well.
I think that must be hugely comforting to you that those people who knew her and worked with her have stayed absolutely loyal.
Absolutely loyal. Yeah, they have. They've been an amazing group of friends.
Yeah, well, I hope that does give you comfort. Your life, though, has been utterly changed by this, hasn't it?
Completely.
I don't suppose for 1 minute you want to be here talking like this.
Your life goes on, but it's not the same. It'll never be the same, because Caroline's not in it, or anyone that's lost a child or anyone. It's just, it changes it, and for no reason. And it's even worse to think, I don't know how she must have felt that day that she hung herself, because that's not an easy choice. It's not an easy thing to do.
No, I mean, once again, I really want to say to people who've been upset by all of this that this is an extremely difficult thing for you to talk about. And I don't know how you put one foot in front of another every day, Christine. And I imagine there are lots of other people listening who also want to say how sorry we all are about what happened. And I just wonder whether you think that ITV could have done more. I mean, we don't want to mention any names, I know you won't, but they have stuck by some other television presenters, and they've been dogged in their support of them.
Totally. And that's what makes you angry. You're sad because you've lost, your daughter, but you get angry. And that's what is hard for me. I'm always angry when I see things or hear things, you get, and I don't want to be. This world, it doesn't seem a very nice place at the moment, and especially for women, it really doesn't.
You must have so many happy memories of Caroline, though.
Oh.
And, you know, she was a joy bringer.
She was, and she'd take us everywhere. You know, if she was doing something good, she'd take one of us, or, you know, and the kids. They were all involved in her life. She didn't, you know, she phoned me every single day. Sometimes it was really good, sometimes it was really bad.
She ran you
You know,
anyway.
yeah, as I answered the phone, you could tell by, you know, Mum, you'll never guess who I'm with, or Mum, oh, this is something. But she took us along with her, and she did have a lovely life, and that's why I don't want to put other girls off doing what they want. And the best thing ever was when she was in Chicago, and the whole family went in one go to watch her, and it was just a wonderful memory.
She won Strictly.
Yeah. Yeah, she did. You know, she did some wonderful things, and if she'd have been a different type of person, she may have got over this. I don't know, but she couldn't.
Well, thank you very much for talking to us about her, and I hope
You're welcome.
it hasn't been too distressing for you. And I actually hope as well that I think you have, you know, you've changed some minds during that conversation.
I hope so.
Well, I think you have.
You know, I want them to know the real Carrie. She wasn't a domestic abuser. She wasn't.
Christine, thank you for talking to me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
That is Christine Flack. And if you have been affected by any of the issues discussed in that interview, please email feedback@times.radio, and we can then send you details of organisations which offer support. But my thanks to Christine Flack for being just so honest about Caroline and about everything she achieved.